Hey guys, I want to have a bit of a rant today, and the rant is about, well, a couple of days ago I put up my latest ULEZ news update, and in it I covered pay per mile, which is clearly coming. In fact, there's a consultation, which today being a Friday, is the deadline to let them know your views on that. I've covered that in another video and also on browncarguy.com. You can go check it out, but it proves the fact that it is on the way. It is definitely something being considered, and also not just in London, but nationwide. So I put this thing up and somebody commented on it on YouTube, and this is what got me riled up. Was like, you know, so what? Is it such a bad thing? You know, it's gonna come in anyway. What should we do? You know, what can we do about it? You know, I'm sorry, but this is a slippery slope. You know, there are so many aspects of this that we've got to consider. People are like, okay, well, you know, it's going to replace road tax, so it'll be all right. Well, okay, really, let's break that down. Let's think about this for a minute. Road tax, whatever road tax it costs you at the moment. Some people have mooted as much as £2 per mile if pay per mile comes in. I don't think it'll be anywhere near that. But okay, let's say 10 pence a mile. Right, that's reasonable. Let's say 10 pence per mile. I think, you know, the government could probably sell that. However, think about it. The average mileage of people in the UK is 10,000 miles per year. That means £1,000 a year. Now compare that to your road tax. You're going to think, oh, they cancel our road tax, but we pay this. Well, think about your road tax. How much are you paying in road tax? And how much might you pay if it is 10 pence per mile? And of course, there's no guarantee that it's 10 pence per mile. It quite possibly could be a lot more than that. Could be less, but it could be more. So that's one aspect to consider. The other aspect, of course, is that, you know, so having said that, it's not necessarily going to be any cheaper, and it most likely will be more expensive, is the point that I'm making there. The other aspect to consider is the impact that it'll have on your driving. Like, even now, we're getting to a point. I mean, I pay, you know, this car, this classic E30 1989 BMW 325i, it does take a lot of money to run a car like this, you know. So even with the current ULEZ charge, for example, you take that, and people would say, well, you know, £12.50 is not a great deal of money in the scheme of things compared to, you know, what you already spend, you know, on running this car. And that's a fair point. That's a valid point. That's absolutely true. But you think about the fact that, you know, I have to pay those big bills. I'm already paying those big bills, whether they're insurance or tax. And by the way, tax, of course, don't forget, tax is a one-off thing. You don't pay tax every time you drive out. You pay tax, you know, either you pay it once a year, twice a year, or if like me, you just pay on a direct debit. So it's not an obvious hit every time you switch on your car. It's something that's happening in the background. And similarly, the costs that are associated with this are happening in the background. You take the £12.50, it is the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back sort of thing. You know, I live right on the edge of the current ULEZ zone. And I never drive this into London. I never turn the other direction off the North Circular. And the reason I don't do that is because A, I object to having to pay that £12.50, but B, is like, it's just praise on you. It's like, oh wow, you know, it's already costing me all this money, and now another, how can I justify that £12.50? You know, you could justify spending thousands on the maintenance and the upkeep of the car, but, and also don't forget that that's an investment of yours, especially with a car like this. But on the other hand, to pay that £12.50 when you're already paying road tax, when I'm already putting fuel in it, and I'll come back to that in a minute, and the fuel is being taxed, you know, it's just like, no, this is just not fair. So that aspect of it would put you off. And again, when you consider the fact that what's happening now with the cost of living crisis and everything costing so much more, suddenly you have to justify everything. So for example, this year, even as a content creator, I've got to think really carefully about attending some of the events that I normally attend, some of the car events and car shows that I attend, because, you know, all of that is a cost, and I've got to add all that together. Every time I go out now, if I do a long trip in the car, I'm thinking about fuel, and I'm thinking, well, how much fuel am I going to have to put in the car? How much is it going to cost? I'm working that out. Now, if you're already doing that, and in some cases, and now this applies not just to me, but I know for a fact a lot of people out there, it would actually put you off making that journey. A lot of people have, like, I always highlight events that are going on around the country, and you know, some people say, oh, it's a nice event. I said, why don't you go to it? And several times I've had messages saying, well, by the time I put fuel in the car, I've gone down there, paid for the ticket, paid for food, it's cost me an absolute fortune, and I just can't afford it. That's really, really sad. And by doing this, by pricing people out of the notion of driving their cars, because ultimately what it's going to do is it's just going to put you off driving. You know, even if you can afford that pay per mile, even if you've already got fuel in the car, whatever, but just the psychological thought of having to do that, of having to pay that additional amount of money to drive that distance, whether it's a short distance or a long distance, suddenly you're going to be like, oh, I don't know. I mean, all of a sudden, there's like, you know, if you were helping out a neighbor or a friend or giving somebody a lift, suddenly you're like, oh, no, I'm not giving anybody a lift now. That's going to cost, you know, I'm not even going to deviate from where I'm going because that's going to cost me extra money now. How is that helpful to community? How is that helpful to society? And also, like, you know, the fact that you now are going to put these limitations and restrictions on yourself is not good. It's not good for business and economy. I mean, imagine all the events and things and stuff and businesses. You're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to spend any money. How is that going to help the economy? Not at all. Secondly, it's not great for the mental health, is it? I mean, you're all sitting at home now. It's just that was back down to lockdown, isn't it? Ultimately, if they want to take us, if they want to keep us locked in our homes and not travel and not use up the resources and all of that, if that's what it's all about, then you go, well, how is that going to impact mental health and personal health? Even when people go for exercise or to the gym or for walk, in other words, I should do, I know, I have a park right next to my home, I should do it. But anyway, a lot of people, they actually drive somewhere to do that. They will drive to the gym, or they would drive to the park, or they drive to the woodlands, or drive occasionally outside of town a little bit, you know, to where they can walk or go find a walking path or something like that. And that's great, and you can do that in your car. All of a sudden you're thinking, oh my God, it's gonna cost me 15 pounds just to get there. Then all of a sudden that's gonna put you off. So, no. This is a slippery slope. We let ULEZ expansion happen. That's the beginning of the end. That is it. That is the beginning of the end. This is where it's going. Because ULEZ up to now, you could have justified in terms of air quality. ULEZ now, you cannot justify. There's no justification for it. If you check out my video that I put up, I put at the end in Brent, where I live, I put up the air quality here. It's terrific, right? There's no justification for it. TfL's own report says there's negligible impact. So what is it? It's just about extending that remit over controlling our movements. That's what it's about. So the more it costs you to go around, the less you will go around. This is a fact. It will happen. You won't pay. You'll pay. You just won't go. It is not good for our health. The other aspect of this that I want to conclude on is obviously when you start to think about civil liberties and our freedoms to move, to travel, to own, to run a car. Quite aside from the mental health issue, I mean, I say to people that driving this car, you know, is therapeutic, and I believe that that's true for a lot of people. In fact, psychologists admit that that is a function of driving. The driving can be therapeutic and calming and helpful for mental health issues, and I know that for a lot of people that is an impact. But to conclude, this attitude of like, oh, well, you know, we'll just take it. We're British and we'll stiff up a lip and we'll just take another one up the backside for king and country. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, you know, look at America, for example. This ain't gonna happen in America, and I'll tell you why it's not gonna happen in America. Because they won't even let go of their guns. And let me say right up front, I am anti-gun. I cannot see any reason why ordinary private individuals should own a gun. And yet you have a situation in America where there are mass shootings, mass killings of children in schools. You know, Zaka Khogyani keep telling about, oh, it's all about the children. In America, children are being killed by people with guns who shouldn't really have guns, and yet they cannot ban the gun because there's such a strong lobby that just won't allow them to do it, right? They're going to be riots. They're going to take to the streets. This is an overly armed, you know, citizen militia. You just walk around with automatic rifles and stuff like that. They're all going to come out into the streets. They can't take away their guns, despite all the very, very good reasons for them to stop the selling of guns and the private ownership of guns. They just can't do it. So imagine with cars. They're never going to let them take their cars away. They're never going to let them infringe their right to drive their cars. That's not going to happen. They're going to stand up for it. Why aren't we standing up for it? I think we need to, because if we don't, then, well, I'm moving to America. Brown car guy. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these three little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.